Hi, Jackie.
Hi, Bob.
I should say, for our podcast listeners, I'm Robert Wright. You are the noted security analyst, Jacqueline Shire, but you're not here in your capacity as security analyst. You're here because you have Sarah Palin obsession disorder. Is that? And
I'm
here to help.
getting over my obsession. I'm here as a sports mom. I'm here as a middle class mom living in suburbia. I'm here as a security mom.
Okay. Well, all right. So you can have it both ways. But it is true, I gather, that you have been spending a certain amount of your time being unable to resist clicking on Sarah Palin-related items.
I know. It's a disorder that I'm not the only woman I know experiencing, and I did confess
or
this
person,
to
more
your
broadly,
wife,
because I have the problem myself.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are. I mean, it's just, this is a huge galvanizing topic that dominates. And for the moment, anyway, is kind of quashing discussion of anything else.
Yeah, well, and there's been some complaining about that in our comments section. So I should say that for those who don't want to hear anything about Sarah Palin, they should really hit that pause button right now. And also, just to get a little defensive, I mean, I think it's true we could have a little more non-Sarah Palin stuff on the site. We're working on that. At the same time, I would say, you know, first of all, this is, next 60 days could determine the fate of the world. I'm not a horse race politics fanatic myself, but at this time of the year, every 4 years, I get pretty seriously into it. And she is a huge and possibly pivotal part of the story. And, I think a lot of the complaints about how much we've been doing about her have been from Obama supporters, but I think Obama supporters need to figure out what you're going to do. And it may be that the smart thing to do is to say nothing further about her. I don't know. I'm not convinced of that. But in any event, I think, the way you figure out what you're going to do is talk it through. So there is a conversation to be had, I think. And anyway, the way I'm going to help you with your disorder is to just let you do an exhaustive data dump. Help the process of it coming out. You working through this.
Right. It's very
cathartic. And then maybe you can just let it go. Let it go.
No, you know what? I've let it go. And I think Gail Collins' op-ed today, which was, breathe deeply into a paper bag, and this too shall pass. And I think it's already kind of working its way through. I think people have sort of metabolized her surprise nomination, her hit the ball out of the park speech at the convention, and now are kind of, really beginning to take it all in and move forward with kind of what the real issues are. So, I mean, maybe the point of our discussion is to separate the fake issues from the real issues. And So why don't you tell us what are some of the fake issues? I mean, things people have tried to stir up agitation about regarding her, where she is in fact, not guilty of the slightest suspicion or whatever. Well, the one that's been kind of taken off the boards for a very long time is, of course, the crazy rumors about the birth of her baby in April, that she was allegedly covering up for her daughter's pregnancy, and on and on and on. So that's just clearly a false, misleading rumor and to be ignored.
Trig is her child.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a list circulating of alleged books that she has sought to ban from the Wasilla Public Library. I mean, I think
list
that's
reached
been
me,
widely
and I could tell it was phony. It is phony, right?
Yeah.
And on that subject, well, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say she did inquire about what the library policy was with respect to asking that certain books be removed. Not banning books, but, taking a step in that, putting her toe in the water, as it were.
She asked the librarian formally, it was at like a town council meeting, right?
Right. And the librarian, according to the ABC News report, took a deep breath and said, we buy our books in according to a policy, sort of national standards of policy, acquisition policies that libraries use, and no, I would not respond favorably if you officially asked to have certain books removed. So, but I think that list that's circulating is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
the other thing that's circulating that bothers me a lot, did you want to say something more about the library
issue? We should link to that ABC report by Brian Ross. One thing that makes clear, it's like 3-4 minute clip, that although she didn't mention books, there had been kind of hubbub in the town about a few books that were in the library, and it may be a reasonable inference that she was part of this kind of voice of concern about specific books. One of them was, a pastor discusses the issue of homosexuality or something. So there may be books that we have reason to believe were on her mind. The other thing I'd quickly say about that, by the way, is that Brian Ross thing. At the end, he's playing into her hands whether he knows it or not, because at the end of it's a kind of a, on balance, critical report, but he ends it on this kind of anti-Sarah Palin note, and that is exactly what they want, so that people will see a report like that and go, oh, this reporter's biased. But anyway, people can watch the clip and judge for themselves.
People can judge for themselves. One thing circulating that I find personally appalling as a parent are photos of her children with photoshopped images of alcohol in their hands and sort of engaged in, behavior you wouldn't want to see. It's just really disgusting and gross. And I wish whoever has these, photos in their email inbox would just delete them and not forward them on so that they don't grow.
Yeah, but this is a good example of the brilliance of their playing the media card. In the internet age, it is inevitable that some 17-year-old is going to do that, and they are going to get some circulation. And we're living in a
some
time
17-year-old is going to Photoshop the images?
People think of everything they see on the internet as media, right? And so all of this stuff can be taken by her supporters as more proof of the media conspiracy. But sorry, I interrupted again. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just think, look, it's just wrong. I do think that families are.
But
we're all against it. It's just completely unacceptable. Okay, and then the other thing, this isn't in the world of La La Land crazy, but I these sort of insidious jabs about her going to 5 different colleges in 6 years, that irks me too. And I think
hadn't heard that. Is it factually true?
That's a good question. It has been reported by an Associated Press reporter, so mainstream media, that she did. It did take her a little extra time to graduate, and she did hopscotch around from schools between Hawaii and Idaho, and that's the way life is sometimes when you're 18.
Do we know where she finally got her degree from?
The University of Idaho.
Huh.
Major in communications, minor in political science.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. But
No, I think we all have to spend a few years finding ourselves.
Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah, whatever. It's just not. It's not really relevant to the issue. There are so many much more important issues that we just don't have to waste our time talking about it.
Right.
Then there's like a second category of issues, and I think that here it gets a little blurrier about what's really relevant to debate and what you kind of have to leave aside. And these in this category sort of fall the very polarizing issues of her church, her religion, whether she believes in creationism, how old is the earth. Abstinence-only sex education, the National Enquirer reporting, which did you read the latest National Enquirer piece?
No, I got off that train when there were reports that the National Enquirer had something in the works involving, I forget whose marital infidelity. Tell me, what is going on there?
Okay, well, there's a new National Enquirer story, and the National Enquirer pays people to tell them stuff. And in this particular case of this story, it may be that they're paying teenagers to say things about her kids. And so I just think, I think that we have to, think carefully about whether to.
We do, but first we have to tell Bob what it says, and then we'll think carefully about whether to say it again.
It's big. Are you sitting down?
I'm sitting down. I'm eager. I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Track, her son, who's about to be shipped off to Iraq, was addicted to the power drug OxyContin for nearly the past 2 years, snorting it, eating it, smoking it, and even injecting it. Ooh. And there are other allegations that he was involved in a vandalism incident, the details of which are not spelled out, at least in the online version of the Enquirer piece, which may or may not have had something to do with a brush with the law and maybe him ending up in the military. So, we don't know what the details are. I haven't been to the supermarket yet.
Well, the brush with the law should be a matter of public record. That should be determinable.
I think if you're a juvenile, though, it might not be. It might be a sealed record.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so family life for the Palins seems to have been fraying at the edges for the last couple of years. Daughter pregnant, living with relatives, son maybe getting involved in drugs, and these are things that families go through, as the GOP is saying.
I think you and I, as parents, can assert confidently that you ultimately have less than complete control over the outcome of the child rearing process.
Yes, but I'm having a hard time picturing my 13-year-old in a few years snorting OxyContin. Just don't see it happening.
I personally am a knock-on-wood person. I'm so far so good, so far as I know in my household.
I know.
But
we don't know.
The modern environment scares me. Right. I mean, just the environment that kids grow up in. But
okay, but the issue is
first of all, you're buying the report. I mean, I would think, look, if the National Enquirer is paying some teenager, I would not trust what they're saying.
I am not buying the report. I'm not buying the report.
Okay.
But I will note that when the Enquirer was going to go forward with a story alleging that she'd had an affair with her husband's former business partner, the McCain campaign slammed back really quickly and threatened legal action if they went forward with that. And by the way, that rumor is repeated again at the end of this piece. I haven't heard a hue and cry yet about this. I don't know.
Now tell me, is this related to the divorce story? There's a separate divorce issue. I'm sorry to complicate this, but there's so many of these things floating around. One thing that apparently did happen is she fired an aide, and a long-time aide she had known a long time, because allegedly he was having an affair with the woman who, at the time, was the wife of an associate of Todd's, although apparently that marriage was already on the rocks and was in the process of dissolving, and maybe dissolving because of this affair, I don't know. And also, the guy she fired ultimately married the woman, so it wasn't like a casual affair, but
I think what that whole episode goes to is that Sarah Palin, there's a certain prickly sort of thin-skinnedness where if people in her immediate circle are either doing things she doesn't agree with, saying things she doesn't agree with, she kind of gets a little sharp-elbowed about it. And I think that there are other examples of this, too. Firing people, having to rehire them. It's to me the mark of a politician with maybe not as much seasoning or experience or maturity, maybe. I mean, if you can't live in your midst with people who are, doing things, saying things you don't always agree with 100% of the time, you got to kind of learn to live with that, maybe.
Well,
and she really seems to kind of take a very hard line with her opponents.
Can I say there's two issues there? I would say the way she does, leave aside the question of whether you're going to fire somebody, I think the way she has done it at certain times illustrates a certain kind of lack of maturity. In other words, she tells the people why she's firing them. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to say to the police chief, I don't like the way you look at me, right? Right? I mean, you're supposed to say, supposed to make something up so that they can never, right? I mean, that's the way these things are done. We just think someone else is more consistent with the overall mission, blah, blah, blah. So there's that. But there is in the prolificness with which she fires people, something that actually scares me. Would scare me if she were president, which is she moves into town and she fires that police chief and puts her own guy in. And then she moves to the state level, and if the head of the state police, I gather is what this commissioner was, right? If he won't do her bidding for her, which in this case was for her family in Troop Brigade, she fires him. I mean, I'm not saying this woman is Mussolini, but that is consistent with an authoritarian way of working, okay?
Yes, I think that is what comes through. That's the message that comes through.
That scares me.
Well, let's not be scared by it.
It would scare me, the thought of her being president, especially in a time when it's easy to make people scared about the terrorist threat and how we need to clamp down. That scares me.
Well, these maybe were rookie mistakes that she made, early in her career. She's now in the big time. And I think she's going to figure out really quickly that even your friends can turn out not to be on the Sunday morning talk shows. Look what McCain went through with his campaign people, him firing people, rehiring them, firing them again, and they show up on Meet the Press and they say what they think. And this is the way it's going to be for her from now on. So she should get used to it.
Although most of the people actually aren't talking, right?
Not yet.
Yeah.
But they will. Oh, look, there's this total blackout. Everything's off the record. No one can say anything. But it's not going to last forever. It's going to break at some point. So.
Well, I don't know. I think in Alaska, like the librarian won't talk. I think she lives in a small town where most people are delighted to have a native who might be vice president. She's not going to ruin the rest of her life by talking. I mean, the story with the librarian was she was not in the end fired, of course. Sarah Palin tried to fire her weeks after asking her if she would remove books in principle. Then citizens rallied behind the librarian. And then later the librarian resigned, allegedly because it was still hard to work with Sarah Palin. But
Right. Anyway, okay. Also in this sort of middle category of things that maybe are going to become real issues, but maybe we're also going to have to kind of figure out a way to get kind of through them and get onto the big stuff, is this issue of the Alaska Independence Party, which the New York Times and other mainstream media have noted that Sarah Palin was never an on-the-books member of. Her husband was a member of the Alaska Independence Party. She either attended or spoke at several conferences, gatherings.
And that party basically wants Alaska to secede from the United States, whether that's... Its formal position is it wants a vote on the subject, I think, but it's basically a secessionist party. Is that fair, you think?
Yeah, I don't know that it seems from the little I've read about the Alaska Independence Party that there are Alaskans of all stripes, potentially that might at times flirt with this party as kind of a cool, nifty thing, and we're up here in Alaska, and we're separate, and we're rich in oil and natural resources, and why should they get all of our money? And it's for us. You can kind of understand living up there in Alaska and becoming taken with this view at some time.
You can, although I doubt that the people who are complaining that Michelle Obama has often not been proud of her country are spending a lot of time talking about the fact that the spouse of Sarah Palin seems to be not especially proud to be an American if he wants to end the status of being an American, but anyway.
Right. So, look, the founder or the leader of the Alaska Independence Party didn't want to be buried under an American flag. There's no question that there's some crackpot lunacy to this group. And the fact that her husband had sort of a sustained and ongoing relationship with them, in my opinion, it does raise questions,
Yeah.
What would happen if we found out that Joe Biden's wife was a member of some Vermont socialist group? People would ask questions about it. It would be an issue.
There is a Vermont secessionist movement, by the way.
There is.
Anyway,
I know, that's why I mentioned it. Because Vermont gets like the kind of lefty version of the, anyway, whatever. So, okay, so there's a sort of middle group, the Alaska Independence Party stuff, the National Enquirer stuff, her religion, the Wasilla Assembly of God, their YouTube videos of the minister, saying things that are really outside the mainstream. But and it's just unclear to me how much or little these issues are gonna become a factor. What do you think?
I don't know. Now, on the minister, the clip I saw was he was just calling homosexuality an illness or something, or it was very, not exactly the gay rights platform, let's say. Has he said this is her current minister or her former minister?
When she moved to the State House, she switched churches. And
to a less, closer to a mainstream church, let's say.
Right. Well, I don't know if it's mainstream. I mean, her church in Wasilla is a Pentecostalist.
Right.
I don't know about Dominionism.
Well, let's just say she switched to a church where they don't speak in tongues.
They don't speak in tongues. Yes.
And I've read reports that it's considered a safer church for politicians. It's a little more middle of the road. But where is the pastor we're talking about? Which church?
The Wasilla Assembly of God Church.
So that's the one she used to be part of and still goes back.
Yes, that's the one where there's YouTube video of her addressing like a graduating class.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Presumably 17-years who are going to go out on some kind of conversion, evangelizing mission. What do they do when they go to spread the word? Okay, so that's sort of the muddied middle ground of issues that I think people are going to continue to debate. There's going to be a lot of noise about them, but I think fundamentally they're kind of a distraction from the real thing.
Okay, and what is the real thing?
The real thing is, and this is what's so fascinating about going to a school pickup, a nursery school drop-off, being on the margins of a soccer game in the afternoon these days, or a field hockey, wherever you are, if you're, the security soccer mom that I am. This discussion of Sarah Palin and her fitness for national leadership just dominates the discussion. And I know what the polls are saying, but I'm here to say to you, Bob, that the moms that I'm talking to, some of them Republican and some of them even, evangelical Christian moms, now granted, we live in New Jersey, are not convinced. And I think that it's one thing that's so fascinating to me is the GOP is really excited now that she's getting huge crowds and she's become, this big celebrity, this big draw. But she's super, super polarizing. The women I'm talking to would not be as passionate in their outrage and anger and concern about Sarah Palin if Olympia Snow were on the ticket. And so I just wonder how much wind the GOP should really feel at its back, because as much as they believe that they've mobilized their core, boy, there is another core that's just as mobilized and just as fired up.
Well, I would suggest that although I don't doubt that you know a mother who's an evangelical and a mother who is a Republican, that...
I didn't say a mother. Come on, Bob.
I don't think in your milieu you're going to find the people they really want to swing. I mean, they're looking... I mean, first of all the people you know, I think, are unusually well educated. They do not have the educational level of the undecided voter in Ohio. There are a few swing states, which is exactly what they're thinking about with Sarah Palin. And I think if you looked at the demographic they're thinking about, these are well, I don't know who they are exactly. I don't think they're like the women you're hanging out with.
Okay, set aside the women. She's polarizing, Bob. She's getting people talking about these issues. This is, I can't believe that at the end of the day this is 100% a good thing.
For America it's not. But look, their whole strategy is to polarize America. And this is what really bothers me. I mean, you know, Obama, say what you will about how facile it is to go around saying we're the United States of America, but fundamentally his platform started out as being one of unifying the country. The Republican strategy is totally based on embittering Americans toward one another. That's what they're about now. I don't mean they want to do it for the sake of doing it, but that clearly is central to the strategy the McCain is pursuing. You know, media elites hate you in Middle America. You know, East Coast elites, people who went to Ivy League schools, they hate you. Don't you know that Barack Obama hates you? I mean, and his whole type of person hates you? That's the whole message.
But you know, I'm just saying that the women I talk to aren't buying it. And by the way, don't laugh at me. I've completely embarrassed my children when I go to the supermarket because I inevitably try to get into a discussion with the checkout woman about Sarah Palin.
Sorry, I meant to not laugh at you. I'm sorry.
All right.
I'm laughing with you.
They're not buying it. They're not buying it. They're not buying it. I understand. Look, we love the fascination with. She's attractive. She wears really cool, I think, kind of expensive designer eyeglasses.
Yeah.
She's really powerfully well spoken. There is an appeal and an attraction to her story. People can relate to her, and they like to see themselves reflected in their all that stuff that we know, kind of unique to Americans. But when you scratch the surface veneer, and there's some time for this veneer to be scratched away, I really question whether people are buying it, and I'm not convinced at all. And by the way, I know you think that we only know like 3 Republicans in town, but you know that's not true. Actually, there's an evangelical church that meets weekly right down the street from where I live.
Where is it? Oh, never mind.
It meets at Westminster Choir College, but.
I still say evangelical is a very broad term. These are not demographically the people they're after. And look, the polls show there's been an impact here somewhere, and that includes in some of the swing states. The Washington Post poll showed this huge migration of white women toward the McCain ticket. Now, that was almost too huge to believe, but there's got to be something underlying that number.
Look, because of course there's this attraction, there's appeal, there's like, who is she? Let's find out about her.
Yeah.
But like the things that the women I talk to say, the one word that comes up several times is fraud, and I was really surprised. I was kind of taken aback by that. I think she's a fraud.
Well,
she's fraudulent.
This gets to the question of, look, I think there's a lot of ways to characterize her, and for that matter, McCain, although he's a special challenge because of the POW hero status, that would, work to their disadvantage. I mean, look, if you look at what the Republicans are masters of, okay, it's their technique, they did this with John Kerry, is they convince people, they say, now look at this guy. Isn't he really the kind of person you hate? Isn't he the kind of person you hated in high school? And they're good at picking up. I mean, even if people had not been thinking that, they're good at picking up on the thing that you can work with. Barack Obama, I think, does occasionally give off an air of kind of self-importance or self-involvement, just a little bit. It's something that could at least be characterized that way. And they take it, and they work with it. and the campaign played in their hands with these huge rallies, both in Germany and at the convention. But that's what they do. And the question is, what can Democrats do that with Sarah Palin and John McCain? And there are really special challenges in both cases.
There are.
I mean, she's a woman. And, like, if you use the word lipstick in a sentence where you're not even talking about her, you're a sexist? Right. Whoa. It's clearly going to be hard to stage a direct frontal assault.
I know. So you're like in the hand-wringing Democrat camp. You're the people that Gail Collins was talking about. You need to go breathe into a paper bag. Look, how long are the Republicans going to be able to get away with keeping her in these super tightly scripted... Now, I know she's doing the Charlie Gibson thing today, and we'll all get to hear about that. But it's just not going to play after a certain point in time. It's not going to work anymore. Like her family life, it will start to fray around the edges. Her stump speech sounds to me really canned, and like every major leg in her stump speech is now under fire. You know, she didn't put she put the plane on eBay, but a broker had to actually sell it. The Bridge to Nowhere thing.
Yeah, but she's not the one who misstated that. In the campaign speech, she was careful to say, "I put it on eBay," which is true. McCain later misstated it. Bridge to Nowhere, yeah, she's
any reasonable
pretty
person
close to
that
flat out lying. I mean, she's certainly totally misrepresenting what happened. I don't think there's much doubt about that.
And the New York Times today has a mega story about the pipeline deal in Alaska and how this TransCanada company that got the rights to, they don't have to actually put anything in the ground for like a number of years.
Yeah, but even that is I think in the way the average American looks at these things, that's nuance. I mean, I read part of that story. It just didn't have the killer, and there's this per diem story in the Washington Post a few days ago about how she's been billing. She spends a lot of time at home in Wasilla, bills the state per diem. I don't think that's killer stuff. I mean, in fact, I haven't thought through the ethics of that. And maybe it's true that the state pays for her meals when she's in the government mansion, but doesn't when she's at home. So you could argue it either way. But I think. Look, I hope you're right, but...
No, I'm just saying that this is her carefully crafted veneer. It's really thin stuff. So far, the Republicans have really... The campaign has kept it together, and it's working. But it's been just days. Cracks are going to appear.
Well,
and
but you just have to do inevitable. It. I'm less confident of that than you are. And as for... I mean, so you think the Democrats should do nothing to facilitate the appearance of the cracks?
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting that. And look, I know that there's this debate now about David Axelrod and should he be replaced? Should Obama come out swinging?
I personally have been wondering that for some time. I think there have been a lot of missteps, and right now, in terms of the anyway, but go ahead.
No. I'm just saying. Look, all of the second guessing of the campaign, and it's just like the second guessing of McCain's campaign leading up to the Republican.
Yeah, but at some point that worked because it was all that second guessing that led them to hire Steve Schmidt, who was the guy who look, however cynical and however much he is degrading American discourse right now and actually damaging our country. He's good at the game. He's the one who said...
A genius.
Those look like Greek columns behind Obama in that facade at the convention speech. Let's exploit that. I mean, he's good, and that resulted from a lot of hand-wringing and second-guessing. Now, it may be too late in the case of the Obama campaign, but when things aren't going well, negative feedback is in order so that you can reappraise.
I think the arc of this narrative has to just play out, and it has to play out in a really accelerated way. And we have to meet this woman. We have to kind of absorb her impact. We have to poke away at her story. We have to come to really understand and know her. And then the Democrats are going to have to push back as hard as they can wherever they decide is the smart place to push back. But we're just at the beginning of this, and this sort of collective paranoia and agony that I sort of sense online, it's just got to stop. It's just people have to become steely-eyed determined to deliver their message and, push back against McCain. That's
against McCain. I agree that the overwhelming focus should be on McCain because partly because of what I said earlier. The media the internet just seems like the media to people, right? I think to a lot of people. I mean, they can tell the difference between a blog and the New York Times, but at the same time, the lines are blurrier, and so just outrage against her emanating from the general direction of their computer screen does seem to confirm her idea that there's like a media plot. I think a lot of it depends on how does the media per se, the actual real established media that has resources to do hard reporting and that has a lot of traffic still, are they cowed by the Republicans trying to work the refs? I mean, they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to convince potential supporters that every criticism of her in the media is to be not trusted, and at the same time, by doing that, intimidate the media into not being hard on her. And to some extent, it depends on whether the media goes for that, or does maybe the opposite and says, "Damn it, we're not going to be intimidated," and sticks in a responsible way with pursuing the facts.
Well, here's one thing. Here's a question that I have for you: the maverick Republican conservatives who had the temerity to object to Palin's nomination right at the beginning, David Frum, Micah Murphy, Ramesh Ponnuru, are they going to some kind of like GOP re-education camp? What's happening with them? Have we heard from them lately?
Well, Murphy's a special case because he had been, he had his axe to grind. He had been rejected as a McCain advisor. I think, first of all, probably both David Frum and Ramesh Ponnuru. Actually, Frum, I think, initially said this may work, but so he's not one of the ones who got the politics wrong. I think I don't know what Ramesh said.
No one's gotten anything right or wrong yet. No one's got anything right or wrong yet. This story is
but
not
there were definitely
told.
people who said, "Hey, this is." Like I know people who said, "This is Tom Eagleton. She'll be off the ticket in 2 days." Well, you were wrong about that. I think, look, they're both of them in different ways, I guess, are, I don't know if they consider them, how much they consider themselves part of the movement. I'm sure they're going to be reluctant to, just the way Democrats are. I don't know. I doubt they are, even as we speak, getting waterboarded. Because I think maybe not that they would be against that, never mind. But I was gonna say, the one thing about the way you recast somebody's image, my computer keeps threatening to restart, by the way, because it installed something, and if I don't click as soon as it makes that threat, which I've done 3 times now, we're toast. But anyway, it's so subtle the way you raise the kind of doubts you raise. Like, is she a phony? It can be so subliminal. I encourage people to go look at this Brian Ross ABC report that we look at, that we link to. There's this moment in there where she's hugging a woman. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
You should really look at it.
I watched
because it. I mean, not that Brian Ross or whoever selected that video is biased against her. I think it's really unflattering. It makes her look like she gives this woman enthusiastically hugs her. I think maybe it's at her church, and she gives this kind of perfunctory hug, and then kind of looks at the woman like, "Are you really good enough to be hugging me?" I mean, it's not what the I assure you the McCain campaign would pick, and it's things like that that really I think help shape people's views. It's so. And that's why I said, part of it is does the media indeed, continue, are some of them going to be out to do it, to do her in, but do it effectively and subtly rather than, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yesterday the media was characterized as being in full-scale revolt against all the restrictions on their coverage of her, the off-the-record on the plane. Her lack of availability, her she takes no questions to or from an appearance. I don't know. I don't think it's going to work for much longer. We're going to get to see. And by the way, I predict that her ABC interview is going to be a smashing success. I think she handles herself incredibly well, and I think that Gibson will have I don't know. Maybe he'll get to stump her with some question about foreign policy or healthcare or something. But I doubt it. I bet she's going to handle it.
I mean, he does have a real challenge because they have. I mean, she's a woman, and they've said we're going to play the woman card. If we're going to claim that everything is gender discrimination. And I mean, they haven't said that, but they've given indications of that. And So he has a real challenge. I hope, for one thing, that the very first question will be, you know, why are you special? Joe Biden and every vice presidential candidate in the history of the universe has eagerly embraced media opportunities. If somebody from Meet the Press calls, they are there, okay? Why are you different, and is this going to be the case next week and the week after? I'd just like to hear the answer. What does she claim about that? Is she going to say Meet the Press is biased against me, or what?
Yeah, she's going to say, look, I just got this call. It's been 2 weeks. Give me a chance, would you please?
Okay, you know, but if you'll just get her on the record to say it's going to change soon, I'd appreciate that. But
yeah.
the other thing is this potentially is another trap, okay, where everyone hounds her to get on the media more and says, you know, we know she won't be able to handle herself when she really has to go up against professional journalists. And then you lower expectations just the way we did for the convention speech.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think a lot of people thought, you know, they've got something up their sleeve. They know something they're not telling us. And, of course, what they knew was that she was going to give an awesome speech. And everyone would react kind of like, wow, you know, we weren't expecting that.
No, you could tell she was a good speaker, I think, when she was unveiled by McCain in the first place. I thought she was fine.
Right. I watched a ton of YouTube video of her right after her name was announced, and I was also impressed. Even the way she handled herself before that church, the crowd of like 17-year-olds, where, you know, she singled out a boy in the audience and said, you know, you're cool. I like your look. You know, this is a woman who's sort of attuned to looks. She knows how to present herself in kind of a cool, hip, non-confrontational way to make herself appealing.
No, she comes off as likable. If I just saw her and, you know, I'd go, yeah, she seems fine. If I didn't know who she was.
Right, right. I mean, I don't know. To me, she emerged a little bit like Angelina Jolie and Lara Croft Tomb Raider, you know, where she was like practicing aerial acrobatics in this house in this remote location, and then suddenly she like emerges full blown, you know, with a gun. Only, of course, with different politics. Angelina Jolie does not share Sarah Palin's politics. I think it's safe to say. But I mean, she's the GOP. She's a superhero with a baby on a hip and aerial wolf hunting. I mean, I didn't even know such a thing existed. Did you?
I hadn't given it much thought. She's for it. Has she actually done it?
I think she's done it. Aerial wolf hunting. Who knew?
Well, she's different, and she's the kind of person who could get a couple of people to spend their time talking to each other about it when they really should be doing something more productive. But
yeah,
I don't know. I'm having trouble thinking about it.
No, you know what though? I'm ready. I'm really ready just to sit back and let this process work. And I think it's really starting to work already. I think her newness is wearing off.
Yeah.
You know, she's now going to start being treated like everyone else, and it's going to start with the Gibson interview, and it's going to be followed by others, I'm sure. And, you know, pretty soon this carefully crafted eggshell around her is going to start to crack, and then we'll learn who the real Sarah Palin is, and people can make up their minds.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is over by a long shot.
Well, I think if people really look into Troopergate and really think carefully about what kind of leaders you want, that should creep them out. But, you know, it's pretty clear she was subverting the mechanism of law enforcement
right.
in pursuing a family agenda. And
there's a steady drip, drip, drip that's going to continue for the next 2 months.
And by the way, you know, when people look into that, and it turns out that her former brother-in-law, whatever, he tasered his son. What he did, he was a patrolman with a taser. Tasers have these safety demonstration modes, and his son said, "Daddy, can I try it?" Okay, clips it on his collar. And I've done the equivalent, because at Disneyland they used to have this penny arcade where they had really old arcade machines. There was this one, you'd put a penny in, grip the handles, electricity goes through your body, you feel it in your chest. Fine. That's what it was. And then his son said, "Can I do it again?" His dad said, "No, that's enough." Okay? So then, of course, when the Palins want to demonize the guy, he tasered his son. Sorry, didn't mean to get off on that.
No. Look, the guy. Look. Know what? Look, this family came from Central Casting. Okay, there's like enough characters in this group. I don't even want to get into it. I don't even want to Apparently,
we should not get into it.
Who cares? It doesn't matter. But one thing though, I know the pregnancy, the daughter off limits completely. Down syndrome baby. You know, she's walking the walk. She's done this honorable, amazing thing. She's had this baby. It's great. But what about a kid's drug use or illegal behavior if they're a minor? Is that off limits? That's what I'm not sure about.
See, I almost feel the opposite. I said to Mickey, I think teen pregnancy is a serious problem because usually it doesn't work out very well. And I think it's terrible to have in the White House an example of it seeming to have worked out well. And look, all of these conservatives would be echoing me if this were a Democrat.
Oh, that's for sure. Murphy Brown and all that.
Yeah,
but I still think
drug
no. I disagree.
Look,
I disagree with you.
I honestly don't see that as some kind of killer issue. I think most parents know it's hard in the modern environment. You know, I don't know. And the kinds of parents who would hold her against it are already on board. Hold it against her are already on board, I think. I don't know.
I don't know. I just, it's just, if you have a kid with a drug problem, I mean, I would imagine as parents, you try rehab, you beg and plead, you have interventions, there's just a lot of resources that you bring to bear, you get outside help, you consult experts, whatever. I don't know. It would just be, it's interesting to know how families handle crises, and this is a crisis, obviously, and it just would be, it would be interesting to understand a little bit more about how she approached it as a parent.
Well, speaking of intervention, I think I have not succeeded in curing your case of Sarah Palin obsession disorder.
I am. I'm seriously, I'm just going to sit back and watch the news, and I'm going to watch the Gibson interview, and I'm going to retire.
Let's vow to chill a little, both of us. I'll chill a little.
All right, let's take
now, I do want to say one thing, because when Mickey was here last week, there was a comment I vowed to get into next time he was here, but he's not here this week. And in fact, for that matter, he's his presence is going to be pretty irregular. He's again making noises about doing something productive with his life, which I'm against. He thinks he should do something other than spend all his time getting not paid to be on Blogging Heads TV and contribute to society. I am against that. But anyway, his appearances will be more occasional. So I got to squeeze these comment discussions in where I can. So will you indulge me?
Okay, I'll indulge you. Lay them on me.
Yeah, I mean, you can be, dealing with your son or something if you want while I'm doing this.
That's okay.
So that he doesn't grow up to be addicted to
school.
Whatever. Anyway,
I'm about to get into my minivan and go pick him up.
Okay, quickly. This was an issue. Well, first of all, on the issue of Sarah Palin, we have a disagreement between the mighty Puck, who says Democrats would be well advised to avoid Palin. Any distraction helps the Republicans. From Uncle Ebenezer, who right after her speech, I believe, said the gloves can now be taken off, and I think there's plenty of ammunition for Obama's surrogates to use against her. Although he apparently thinks Obama shouldn't do this in a really heavy-handed way. I think there's a lighthearted way for him to occasionally refer to her, but lighthearted is key. I actually thought he was pretty good on Letterman last night, being lighthearted. But the comment I vowed to read was from Simon Willard, and it's an interesting point. Well, what it raised in my mind, it's all about how the elitism charges, and how, look, Obama and McCain are already, they are elites. I mean, I think, first of all, we should distinguish between elites and elitists. I mean, elites are just people who have done well and are at the top of the tier, and elitists are people who think that those kinds of people should be revered and given disproportionate power. So, like, if you think elections shouldn't be left to the mere American people, and professors should vote instead, or CEOs should vote, you're an elitist. But in my mind, this kind of raises the question. One more final question of kind of how this thing could be spun in principle. The Republicans have succeeded in conveying the idea that Obama's a snob and looks down on people. Well, I think almost everyone looks down on some kinds of people. I suspect that McCain looks back on guys who aren't tough, and did in high school. And I suspect that Sarah Palin looks down on certain kinds of people. I guess the question is the only kind of snob allegation that works in America one that you're an effete snob, right? You're a well-educated Ivy League type. Is that the only thing that works in politics? Or can you convey the idea that, well, in a way, the idea that's conveyed in that hug image in that ABC clip, where she does she look down on ordinary people? Because, I mean, like I said, I think a lot of politics is now convincing people that your opponent is the kind of person they hated in high school. Well, actually, I think both John McCain and Sarah Palin are the kinds of people I wouldn't have liked, And Sarah Palin, this is what the question I'll close with for you. she was like the prom queen, right? I don't know if she literally was,
No.
but that's the type, right?
Look, no, wait, Pop. Look, I don't know. You and I had totally different high school experiences. Look, I think she was totally likable, popular. She played sports. She was attractive. I bet she was the kind of kid who had everybody sign her yearbook.
Yeah.
And, and this whole discussion about Ivy League, elitist, bullshit, excuse me.
It works.
But,
it works politically.
Look, Washington is full of all kinds of people, and you and I both know, with kids approaching apply to college age, how hard it is to get into any kind of top-tier school. I mean, this idea that this is just, it's a total fabrication. And I think if you go to Washington, you meet way more people who went to state schools than you meet who went to the 7 Ivy League schools, and it's just not an issue. It's just not.
Oh, I think it works for the Republicans. I think they harness a kind of class resentment, and to some extent, maybe you could say anti-intellectualism. Although I think anti-intellectualism is class resentment to a large extent, and I think they do it well. I think that works. I think I'm crazy to think it could be moved. It could be moved to a different context, and you could say McCain's a different kind of guy you didn't like in high school. Maybe I'm wrong, but and I suspect you're right that Sarah Palin had a very high favorable rating in high school. You're probably right.
Yeah.
But well, anyway, we digress. Okay, we're both on the path to recovery.
I'm recovered.
And thank you. Yeah, right. And thank you so much, Jackie. This was fun.
You're welcome. All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.